My parents moved to Dearborn when I was about 4 years old. My parents bought a house. We're in the Ford Homes, Park Street. And I just think that my parents wanted to move into a suburb because that was kind of the thing you did back in those days. Lived there until my parents died. My father worked at Ford, as did most of my family. My great-grandparents came here from Switzerland. I was in the first class that went to Edsel Ford, first graduating class, 1956. When we went to Edsel Ford, it was traumatic for those of us who were in the first class. When we went to Dearborn High School, there was a place where Buddy's is today called the Sweet Shop. If you were a juvenile delinquent, you spent a lot of time in the sweet shop on lunch and after school. But Edsel Ford was a long way. And so we thought, well, that's fine. We'll just take the car and drive up to the sweet shop. When we came back, somebody came into the class that started after lunch and said, Dick Kernen, are you here? Yeah. You have to see the principal. So I go to the principal, what's going on here? You're not to leave the parking lot for lunch. Really? Where am I going to eat lunch? In the cafeteria? Give me a break. So we just kind of discounted that. And so they, in order to entrap us, they got a bunch of students, and they were called the Ground Observer Corps. So they would stand out in the parking lot, and if you went to the sweet shop, they got your license number, and the next thing you know, you're back down in the principal's office getting yelled at. My first job, well, second job, was at Greenfield Village. I was on the ground crew, and I worked out of the greenhouse there and went over to the museum every morning when I got to work and watered all the plants and did that kind of thing. My mother was always very worried about me because my father was paying for my car and not happy because I'd run my other car into a tree. My mother was very concerned about me, and I came back from my girlfriend's house. She just lived on the next block over, and taped to my steering wheel was wanted. It said, wanted, office boy with car with liability insurance. So anyway, went to the station and got hired. The station was owned by the American Broadcasting Company. I went to work for WXYZ, AM, FM, and television, driving a car. Well, here's how long ago it was. I would leave Joy and Greenfield at about 10 o'clock every morning and turn the radio on, and I would listen to the radio station to 2 soap operas. And my father told me when I took the job, I said, well, you'll be glad to know, Dad, that I've got a job now. I'll be able to make my car payment. He said, yeah. But, you know, don't look for a long future there. Radio's dead because television was the big thing. So who in the heck is going to sit around and listen to The Lone Ranger when you can watch it in your living room? So anyway, I did that for 6 months, from July through the end of December. So I got notified I had joined the Naval Reserve. And I got a notification, you're being called to active duty at the end of December of this year. When I came back to the radio station after 2 years in the service, the radio business had to figure out something to do besides dramas and cop shows and things like that, because TV was there. And so we were trying to figure out, well, what are we going to do? So we started playing music. I was a music director of a top 40 radio station in 1961, 62. What an amazing time that was to be in the radio business, because we literally reinvented, I say we, but the business had reinvented itself. I mean, I was working at a radio station when the Beatles came here.
#1 song from 1968. These are the Beatles. On the hit line from Chelsea, this is Revolution.
Help, I need somebody can find me love.
Proud to present the Beatles.
In the 60s, you know, radio went through this whole trauma of having to compete with television. Radio stations were trying to figure out what to do with themselves, and they stopped broadcasting FM. When I first went to work for WXYZ AM, they had an FM.
WXYZ.
In the mid-60s, the Federal Communications Commission said, hey guys, you know, you're wasting thousands and thousands of signals by replicating what you're doing on AM.
Let's live it up with Ted Clinton.
Cut it out. And if you don't cut it out, here's the choice. Choice A is cut it out, start inventing new programming. And choice B is send your license back and we'll give it to somebody else. Well, nobody wanted to send the license back. And so WXYZ looked around and said, we're going to have to do separate programming on FM. And we're going to need a program director. And I was appointed program director of what's now WRIF. FM barely existed. So I ran WRIF for 3 years, from 1969 to 1972. The nice thing about what happened to radio is it created a market for music that had never existed before. All of a sudden, everybody was doing records. I ran that station for 3 years. It went from being this, you know, nothing thing. All of a sudden, FM is the greatest thing since kissing on the lips. And I had been, at that point, with ABC Detroit for 15 years. And I said, is there another opening here at the station? They said, yeah, there's an opening in the business office. And I said, great, I'll take it. Unfortunately, they sent somebody in from ABC New York to interview me about what I knew about cost accounting, which can be on the head of a pin, believe me. I said, well, I don't think I'm really very good at it. I don't think I've really written a check since I got married. And they said, don't let the door hit you. So at the urging of a couple of friends of mine, they said, why don't you go talk to Specs Howard? And I said, a broadcast school? Those guys are all crooks. All they do is take their money. And they said, no, he's a different kind of guy. Just go talk to him. So I went over, because I was bored to tears, because I had 15 years seniority and 3 weeks vacation. And we talked, and I said, I'll tell you what, I'm not sure, and you don't know who I am very well. I knew him, but not well. And I said, let me do this. I'll work the month of March, 1972. I'll work for free. I don't need the money. And we'll talk about it in April. April 1st of 1972, I went to Specs Howard, and I've been there ever since. Mayor Guido was a graduate of the Specs Howard School, where I work. And one of the most wonderful people I've ever known. And he nominated me, when he's still at City Council, nominated me to be on the Cable Commission here in town. I live in a great neighborhood with wonderful people and kids. My wife and I are the old folks on the corner. It's just a really, really nice town. And I think one of the things I've always been struck by, talking to people from other places, the city services in Dearborn are terrific. It's a nice place to live.